Welcome back, everyone. This is Awesome Reville with 2FXC Tactical and our From the Vault series, featuring rare, historical, and unique firearms that come through our shop right here in New Prague, Minnesota. I do apologize for our absence over the last month. We've had a lot going on in August. We're in the middle of building an indoor shooting range right here in New Prague, and it's taken a lot of my time away from stuff like this. But we're very excited to be back, and we do have a list of really unique historical guns for you. Today we have something that isn't necessarily rare in terms of you will have seen them, but certainly something one of these as old as this one is fairly unique. We have the Browning Auto-5 semi-automatic shotgun. Now, when it comes to John Moses Browning, the platitudes that could be said about this man, we don't have enough time for that. That should be a video all on its own. He is credited with at least 32 different firearm designs, as well as 7 different cartridges that he designed himself. So this man has had a large influence on the firearm community. Most of the cartridges he invented are still in use today, as well as almost all the firearms are still floating around there today. In terms of military service, this man changed military service weapons, I should say, forever. We still use the Browning M2 Mod Deuce 50 caliber machine gun, a mounted machine gun on Humvees and in aircraft. So this guy really cannot be undersold as maybe the greatest firearm designer, manufacturer of all time. He worked for Winchester in the 1800s and then eventually sold his rights to Fabrique Nationale de Herstal, or FN, over in Belgium. And that is where this particular gun ends up into the world. So he designs this gun in 1898. It was a very, very forward leap in terms of shotguns. It's credited as being, if not the first, one of the first semi-automatic shotguns to ever see wide success throughout the world. This one is an actual Belgium FN made one. This one was made in 1929, so this is a very early model. Now, unfortunately, John Moses Browning had passed by the time this particular gun came out. He passed in 1926, which is why, you know, his uniqueness to the firearm world is so amazing, because most of his designs were done before the turn of the 20th century, and we're still using them today. So this particular firearm here really set the tone for what modern shotguns or semi-automatic shotguns would do. In fact, most semi-automatic shotguns in the modern world will still use in the internal design that you find in this particular gun. So I think one of the coolest things that shows you this is an earlier model is if you look at the screws here. Let me move my hand out of the way. You can see they're all double tapped. There's a screw on top of a screw. This was done to ensure that they would be locked into place, and it would take actual torquing to get them out when you're utilizing the gun. So this is a very, very cool engineering feat from early 1900s. Most of this stuff would go away and become a little bit more modern as the years would go on. But getting back to this gun, this particular one is the full 12 special steel model of the Browning Auto-5. So this is one of their higher end. This would be like a premium model. Think of, you got the Browning Satori, you got the Browning Satori 725, right? 2 different models within or 2 different submodels, I should say, within a model. That's basically what this is. The Auto-5s feature this humpback design, is what we call this here, on the receiver to incorporate the bolt for the semi-auto function. We would see the Remington 11, Model 11, and some Stevens incorporate this kind of design. In fact, the Remington Model 11 was, notorious for ripping this particular design off. There was a little bit of a lawsuit about that early in the 1900s. When this gun came out, this was just unbelievable for people that you could get a semi-automatic shotgun. Now, you do have to realize, though, these really went into production around 1900. These were very expensive guns at the time. They would retail in 1900 around $30 a firearm. You go, well, $30 doesn't seem so bad. Well, that's roughly $1,000 in today's money when you adjust for inflation. It's a little bit over that. The inflation calculator only goes back to 1913. So it's probably like $1,100-ish when you adjust for inflation. And again, you go like, well, we spend $1,000 on guns today. That is true. We do that. But what we don't have is the average annual salary that those people in 1900 have, which was around $450 a year. That's what they were making. So if you're dropping $30 on a firearm, you have a really good job. This is a lot of money. These were sold and were broadly popular in terms of the base Auto-5s, but not to the extent of some of the Winchester shotguns, some of the pump actions of the time, just because of cost. The full 12 special steel, which is what this one is, it's a mouthful there. There's not a lot of these that were made. These came along in the 1920s, again, trying to offer a kind of a premium option of their weapon system. Very unique ideas for the time. We didn't really see a lot of that early on, where you see, you got your base model, and then you have a premium line of your model, and then you'll have your kind of your standard. So you're thinking like the Remington 870 Wingmaster, then of course you got the Remington 870 Field, right? There's all these subsections of a base model. That wasn't really how it worked in the early 20th century. You just had, the Winchester Model 12, for instance. You just had the Winchester Model 12. It wasn't the Winchester Model 12 Field. It wasn't the Winchester Model 12, premium, whatever that was. They did have the trench version, of course, for warfare, but that would have been a military firearm, not really something that they were marketing to the civilian market at the time. So to see this kind of innovation forward and trying to find a premium firearm was very forward-thinking towards a modern era, if you will. So we would call this a modern shotgun in many ways, despite the fact it is, coming up on 100 years old. Now, when you go like, well, it's a Browning. Browning was born in America. That is true. Why is FN making Browning's guns? So there was a little bit of a falling out with Browning and Winchester in the late 1800s. And he would sell a lot of his designs to FN, where they would make them for him, using the Browning moniker for many of them. So this one says on the receiver, Fabrique Nationale de Herstal. And then up here, it does say the Browning Arms Company in Ogden, Utah, which is where they still are today. So this is a Browning design that was made in Belgium with FN. This would continue for most of Browning's guns all the way up to about World War II. Now, obviously, when you think of Belgium, Belgium is in Europe. Belgium is famous for the Ardennes Forest, which is where Hitler and his forces went through to go around the Maginot Line and conquer France in 1940 and 1941. So Belgium ended up being a part of the Greater Third Reich. Unfortunately, they were a satellite state all the way up until 1944, obviously, when the invasion of Normandy happened and the Allies, freed Europe. So that does mean that there are many Browning designs that would end up in Nazi hands, unfortunately. The Browning High Power being one of them, that would end up having a Third Reich marked gun that was used in the war, albeit not in huge numbers, but it was around. So was the Viz 35, P35, which was a 1911 clone and 9mm. So there were several different Browning designs that would end up on the opposite ends of the United States. Now, when it comes to guns like this one, let's not go too far down the weeds. These guns didn't see overt military service. I mean, there are some instances that when I was doing some research on them that they did show up a little bit in World War I. It was not widely used. It was mostly the Model 12 trench guns. That's what you saw. The Model 1897 trench guns. That's mostly what you saw in World War I. These were designed with hunting in mind, waterfowl being the big one. In the modern world, we live, at least here in Minnesota, where we have different zones. So in southern Minnesota, it's shotgun only. You can't use rifles to hunt deer, for instance. And then in northern Minnesota is where you can use rifles. That wasn't really true back then. You could just use whatever you had. Your slugs for shotguns was not really a thing. So that's not what this was really designed to have in mind. But these were very reliable. And that's why this is credited as one of the first broadly available semi-automatic shotguns available to the civilian market. These would stay in production for almost 100 years, or actually I should say right at 100 years in terms of the design. It was designed in 1898, patented. It technically really didn't go into full-blown production until 1900, and then Browning would make these all the way up until they discontinued them in 1998. So just, I guess, a few years shy of full production of 100 years. You will still see a lot of Auto-5s throughout the world. These do come across our shop fairly regularly, the Auto-5. We just don't ever see really early examples of the early machining that you see on like this particular gun. It's very unique. You know, for collectors that are really looking to build out their collection and have period correct guns, this would be a perfect example. There is not a whole lot of changes between this and the first production 1900 guns. It really wasn't until the 1930s, 1940s that you would start to see some of the features be refined for future use. But until next time, guys, we really appreciate you taking some time to look over something like this, the Browning Auto-5. We got more coming to you each and every week. Can't wait to bring you the next ones. We'll see you then. Please like, comment, and subscribe.